Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately called IPA USA. IPA USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association. And as part of our efforts to promote play, we've introduced Porch Play Chats, which are just conversations with people who are just as passionate about play as we are. You can find all the Porch Play Chats, and um, by the beginning of March, there'll be over 300 of them that are available to you free of charge by going to our website. And up in that top right-hand corner, you can follow us on Instagram, friend us on Facebook, subscribe to YouTube, and also we have Spotify where we're uploading all of them on Spotify, which is free to you as well. And magically, every Monday morning, a new Porch Play Chat will appear in your feed. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm president of IPA USA. With me on the porch today is Stephanie Goloway. Hi, Stephanie. Welcome.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
Stephanie is a lifelong educator and advocate for play, storytelling, and imagination. She's taught preschool and elementary school and special education, as well as been the children's librarian and a professional storyteller. She is now Professor Emerita of Education at the Community College of Allegheny County in Pittsburgh, and she is happily the author. And this is a great book. So I'm just telling you, you need to go on Amazon and get it right now. Happily Ever Resilient, Using Fairy Tales to Nurture Children Through Adversity. And it's available at Redley Press or go to Amazon, whatever is easier for you. And she loves to share the ordinary magic of resilience in her weekly newsletter and on her website, Imagination on the Move. So today, I'm so excited. We are talking about how slaying the dragon in play makes us resilient. Oh, I just can't wait for this one. Talk to me about this.
Thanks, Deb. Well, I knew we were going to be chatting, and a couple of things have happened in the last couple of weeks that I thought that kind of made me think that this might be an interesting topic. One of those things was I got from my newsletter, a new subscriber said that somebody had forwarded her the newsletter, and she was so happy to find it because she had always believed that fairy tales were important for children. And that when she started teaching, she'd been at a school where the head of school told her they were inappropriate and not that she could not use them and with her preschoolers. And she said that she was kind of taken aback, but did what she was told she needed to do. And now she's at a new school and has able to immerse herself in fairy tales again. And it really highlighted for me what I guess I know because I talk to people about fairy tales a lot, which is that still and always, there are many, many, many schools, childcare centers,
Mm-hmm.
and adults, parents who believe that fairy tales are bad for kids. And a big piece of that is the violence. I mean, that's been like back in the 80s, and then when I did my master's thesis, I was really looking at people pushing back against the violence in fairy tales, and that was why they were inappropriate. And then I was, for my newsletter every week, I pick a different fairy tale and talk about it and how it ties into resilience. And there's one that has been kind of inching into, like, for years, it's been a favorite, not very well-known fairy tale, King Crocus and the Dragon. And I love the book. It's beautifully illustrated with woodblock prints. It's a great story. It's about a dragon that starts to eat all of the sheep and the rams in a town. And the king, everybody tries to fight the dragon. Nobody knows what to do. And then the shoemaker in the town comes up with an idea that actually ends up, he creates a ram and fills it full of all kinds of the things that all of the shoemakers and all of the people, the tradespeople in the town use for their trade, and puts sulfur in it. And the dragon eats the sheep, gets hot belly because it catches on fire because he's got a fire breathing belly, drinks all of the water in the river and explodes. And And he's the shoemaker is the hero, and it ends with one of my favorite lines ever, which is that the shoemaker, the first pair of shoes that he made was for the princess, and he made them out of dragon skin. And
Oh,
I mean, it's a great little story. I didn't do a great job of recapping it, but I have not used it for my newsletter because, as you and I were talking about beforehand, I mean, people like dragons. I love dragons
I
myself.
love dragons. Yes.
Like, is it too violent? Is it, I thought people are going to hear about this story. They're not going to want to share it with kids because the dragon gets it in the end. But the dragon was bad.
Hmm.
I mean, the dragon was hurting people. Like he was eating their livelihood. He was eating their food source. And I think we need to, it started me thinking a lot about what messages are our kids getting in these stories that we share with them? And conversely, how does that translate into the play that they create on their own? And I think some of these messages that the fairy tales have, and I thought this for years, are offer kids the opportunity to see that of being powerful. How do
Hmm.
you how can you take control over your circumstances, even if you are, this lowly shoemaker boy. I mean, and he's in the book, he's looks like a kid. An apprentice, the lowest of the low, who has the efficacy, the resilience to go, and the agency to go to the king and say, hey, I have an idea.
Hmm.
And the king saying, okay. I mean, we've tried everything else. And then being able to put it into play and save the day. And that power that the heroes and heroines in fairy tales show, it is an important message for children because they have so little power over so many things in their lives. And with most traditional fairy tales, that power comes with somebody getting it in the end, whether
Hmm.
it's the witch or the dragon or the evil king, and there is what we would call aggression in those tales. And the aggression, we kind of seem to overlook the fact that there's that power is and it's always good over evil. I mean, honestly, in any traditional fairy tale, the bad guy doesn't win ever. And we might say that that's unrealistic for children to know, but I mean, in order for kids to become resilient and to believe that they can take control over their own lives, I think they need the message that, yeah, like you don't have to be rich and famous to have good ideas and to take matters into your own hands and make things better for your community. And I think that to me is what fairy tales do. And
Is the power of fairy tales. And what cracks me up or frustrates me is that, oh, they're too violent. But then they're watching these god awful television shows or playing what is it, Call of Duty video games, or, doing the, and
watching the news.
yeah, oh my goodness, or watching the news where it is it is just this. And I think, when I don't watch the news much anymore, it's too depressing. You feel almost hopeless at times, right? Because of everything that's happening that you have no control over. So, I want people who are listening to this to consider the power that fairy tales have to strengthen people's ideas, to make them be more creative in thinking and problem solving, and to recognize that in fairy tales the good guy wins, so that people don't feel this hopelessness that they might feel otherwise. Well, and which morphs into, well, I don't like that, but I can't do anything about that as an adult, where you feel powerless. And and so I think that's the beauty and the strength of using fairy tales, And you should, that's why I'm telling you, you should get Stephanie's book because it gives you such great ideas for how to use those fairy tales to build resilience in young children. And don't we think that every child needs resilience?
I mean, I think resilience, as I've said multiple times, in any place anybody would listen to me, I think resilience is our magic bean that
Mhm.
all we need to plant in all children. All children have the capacity for, all of us have the capacity for resilience, and people who are resilient, who have had the opportunities to develop that in childhood, have better outcomes in their lives, like across the board, whether you're talking about success in school, in life, in relationships, in jobs, the whole shebang. Stuff happens to all of us. It's usually not a dragon or a witch or a giant coming into our lives. But it's everybody has stuff happen, and that ability to adapt to change, which to me is what resilience is all about, should be child development 101. It's really our ability to adapt is
It
resilience.
is, and our ability to give children a tool that's lifelong, right? It's like potty training, and I know that that's crazy to bring up that correlation, but it when we potty train children, and it's a pleasurable experience, and we're not rushing them until their body is developmentally ready, and they can gain power over their actions when they're in the bathroom versus not having power when they don't have that muscle control. That's a lifelong skill, lifelong, right?
Mhm.
And this building of resilience is also a lifelong skill. And when you look at the current situation where we have 4-year-olds on anxiety medication and 7-year-olds on antidepressants, and we think about the lack of resilience that each of those children had, then we really have to rethink the importance of fairy tales, right? In strengthening that feeling that they're not powerless and that they can overcome. Instead, I mean, everybody gets depressed, but a 4-year-old should not be on antidepressants or diagnosed as having some crazy oppositional defiance disorder or something at 5.
Yeah.
And so, I think we have to reshift our beliefs about the power of fairy tales in building that resilience so that we can improve children's outcomes, because right now we're not doing such a great job.
Right. I mean, whatever, I mean, I think to me I mean, a big piece of it is sharing these stories with kids because we tell ourselves stories. We are storytelling animals. And so we continue to tell ourselves stories throughout our whole lives, and what stories go in impact what stories we tell ourselves, obviously. But I think
Mhm,
it also, the connection between fairy tales and play, I think
mhm.
is important. And we've talked, a lot of in the field are talking about like rethinking our no, and like the classic like climbing up the slide. Oh, um, weapon play kind of falls into that. We have this automatic knee-jerk response to saying no, fairy tales are bad because there's violence and we don't want kids exposed to that. But what do we say about their play? I mean, think about rough and tumble play and how many people will not allow rough and tumble play because it is, quote, violent when it's not.
It's not
It's
risky play.
risky
It's too
play.
dangerous. It is, and it's so funny. Who was it that said rethinking? Somebody did a Porch Play Chat that talked about rethinking your no and changing it to yes, and might have been Ross Thompson, could have been Mike Huber.
Yeah,
Um,
Mike's done a lot about it. Kisa Marks has talked a
Lisa
lot about
Mark.
it. I was just rereading her book, which is a fabulous book too. She and Samuel Broaden wrote a book on weapon play,
Mhm,
which I kind of have been dipping into because it ties in so like the objections that people have and have had. And as a young teacher, I certainly was part of it. I was told no weapons. I never had weapons. Um, but that it kind of ties into the same objections with fairy tales, is we're worried about children becoming violent in a violent society. And we have, for the past half century, increasingly snuffed opportunities. I mean, when you and I were kids, I mean, I don't really think I played Cowboys and Indians much, and I know that it's racist, and but you know, like there was really, I mean, my sister had a pop gun. I mean, I had water pistols. There was no question about it, and we've increasingly cut off opportunities, and as far for children to experience power in a play based way, whether it's through rough and tumble play or risky play, or, you know, taking their finger and going bang, bang, or whatever it is. We've said, no, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad, that's our no. And it hasn't worked to provide a society that is less violent and less aggressive. And you know, I think that the knee-jerk response to say no, fairy tales are bad for kids is similar in my mind to saying no, rough and tumble play is bad. All of these things are bad. We want children to somehow develop not only resilience, but also empathy and the capacity to do all of these wonderful things by taking away the ways they developmentally need to develop them.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like rough and tumble play is the best way to nurture self-regulation, which is part of resilience. Because if you're doing rough and tumble play, and Jeff Johnson of Child Care Bar and Grill and I were talking about, like, if you watch children doing rough and tumble play, and I mean, they have the play face. Like,
Yes.
they're like their eyes are different, their faces, they're not angry and aggressive. They have
Right.
a play face. And if they accidentally hurt somebody, or maybe purposely hurt somebody, or grab somebody too hard, that child's face changes. It's no longer a play face. It's a sad face. It's an angry face. It's a growling animal face. And if they want the play to continue, they'll back off.
Uh-huh. Yes.
And like, I mean, so many
Not
of
cues. This. They're learning to read nonverbal cues.
yeah. And learning to control their own bodies. I mean, the whole proprioceptive thing. I know Stacy's been on here, and you know, she's all about proprioceptive, which for literacy. Even if you talk about resilience, everybody needs to learn how to read. But that idea that when kids are rolling around on the floor and like arguing and fighting and having the, you know, like fighting, or playing it out with a finger or a stick and saying, you know, I'm going to get you, to stop all of that, it takes away their opportunity to develop self-regulation in a really some significant ways. And I think we see that when we see kids not being able to self-regulate, which comes out as challenging behaviors, but it also comes out as anxiety and depression, because they're out of touch with being able to read other people's cues. They're out of touch with being able to read their own body cues. Those aren't the only ways that they develop the self-regulation and resilience, but they're significant. And I think it gets back to that, you know, like, well, what is your no and why? Is it our own discomfort? We've talked about this with fairy tales. Children understand fairy tales differently than adults do, in the same way that they understand why there are clouds in the sky differently, because developmentally, they're not like us.
No, right.
And so,
and I want to get back to that self-regulation piece, because not only are we taking away fairy tales because they're too violent, but we're also limiting their ability to learn when their body has to go to the bathroom, because we take everybody down the hallway to the bathroom, line them up against the wall. So we tell them when they're going to go to the bathroom, or we make everybody have snack at the same time. So we tell them when they're hungry. And so we are robbing children of opportunities to develop self-regulation with almost everything that we're doing to them, right? You know, we're going to we're going to rotate around every 15 minutes and you're going to do a different center. And so that's not,
You're going to be bored.
it's not funny. So I, everything that we want to happen, we're preventing from happening because we've gotten into this cycle of we need to, and it all goes back to we need to get them ready. It's, we have to get them ready instead of just taking a deep breath and letting children develop, right? So if you let them develop through play, then they're going to be ready. But you can't force readiness when children haven't had an opportunity to play. And so all of these facets of fine motor, gross motor, social emotional, cognitive, language development, all of those things center around children being able to hear conversations, engage in conversations, and explore books that are fun, not scripted reading, right?
Yeah.
So we have to make it enjoyable, not horribly boring.
Well, there's that. Yeah, absolutely. And I think with fairy tales, I think, I mean, you see those themes in fairy tales, which are so ancient and so kind of tied into the way our brains really develop. Um, you see those being played out, and like in play, like with the play face, when kids are play fighting or rough and tumble play or taking risks and like, I'm going to jump from the highest building, and when it's like a stump that's 2 feet off the ground, they recognize that they are playing. It is a world of make-believe. And I think children do the same thing when they hear about these things happening in fairy tales. There is, I mean, you hear once upon a time, and no child is thinking that there will be a dragon that's going to come and dive down on their house. I mean, I've never talked to young children who actually believe that,
are fearful of
are
that.
fearful
Yeah.
of that, because in their imaginations, I mean, it's kind of where they live all the time, is things kind of float in, float out. And so when we offer them fairy tales that are in the make-believe realm, and then they go and take that into their play, their make-believe play outside or in the wherever they play, at the snack table, they're making those connections with all of the things that they need to develop executive function skills, as well as self-regulation, as well as their imagination and their creativity. And those are the stories they're going to play out. And if they don't have that kind of story, I mean, I mean, there are a lot of modern children's books that are really fun, but unless a
Yeah.
teacher says, okay, pigeon on the bus. I mean, it's a cute book, but unless the teacher sets up chairs and saying, okay, now like, is the pigeon going to drive the bus and let's make a bus? I mean, you don't see kids playing that, I don't think, out of their own imaginations, but you do see.
Right. Yeah, you see teachers directing that play, but you don't always see children doing it spontaneously.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, and I go back to the we've talked a lot about resilience, and that is critical. And we've talked about how children need to have some power over their lives because we've taken all their power away. And we've talked about how that social emotional regulation can happen and strengthen that resilience building, which is lifelong. But the other thing is the literacy aspect of it. I mean, an engaging story with a teacher who's dramatic in the way that they're telling the story, and then providing prompts that are available so children can get into those places and recreate that story. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It is just amazing and they'll repeat that story over and over and over again and be able to retell that story. And so those are just amazing things that we can do for literacy.
Yeah. I mean,
That's not the alphabet of the week or, oh my God, please, what are we doing? So, I think I think fairy tales have so much benefit in such a broad range that we need to relax. Start with, I don't know, which one, if they wanted to baby step those ways in and increase, start easier for them where they feel more comfortable and move up. What would be the first book, maybe? First
I would,
fairy,
off the top of my head, I would say Three Billy Goats Gruff.
Three Billy Goats Gruff.
It
There you go.
is simple, it's episodic, it works really well with very young children, older children like it too. You can, like play it. And since we started with this whole idea of people like pushing back against the violence or aggression, I mean, the troll gets, I mean, it's not an unaggressive story. The troll who wants to eat the billy goats gets shoved off the bridge.
Mhm.
And in some stories he's never seen again. I mean, all kinds of open-ended things. But as far as getting past that first, like, no, anything that happens bad in a story is bad for the children I'm sharing it with. I think the Three Billy Goats is one that you can kind of test the waters after you get pushed off the bridge of fairy tale, into to see how you feel. There are lots of different versions of it. Some of them are more graphic, but I mean, they're picture books. Like, it's not, there's no blood.
Wonderful. Okay. All
Okay.
right. So, whoa, this has been amazing. Hang in. Any final closing comments before we stop? No?
No,
Good.
covered a
Good.
lot.
That was fabulous. Hold on. I'll be right with you. To learn more about IPA USA, please visit our website at ipausa.org. And until next time, keep on playing.